my bold prediction would be that we're going to see more high-scoring games than not, especially as they continue to work on the defense, which is probably what's ailing them a bit right now. And some of that is understanding some of those guys playing in this kind of defense for the first time and understanding where to rotate, when to rotate. Some of it is not stopping the ball. And some of it, like Coach Tank says, is, letting your offensive performance maybe dictate your energy and effort on that end of the floor too. So things defensively, they're much more of a work in progress. Not that they aren't on offense, but that talent, that God-given capability that we're talking about, it definitely comes through much more on the offensive end.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome to a 3-Mile Pod. I am your host, Cole Manbeck, joined today by Derek Young of K-State Online. No John Kurtz today. John will be back later this week as we have our football pregame show against Arizona State, previewing that big matchup Saturday in Manhattan at 6 p.m. But we're here to talk some K-State basketball today, which calls for another toast from our friends over at Holiday Distillery. Go get some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon for hoop season as well. Plenty of times to enjoy that while watching the Cats during basketball seasons. You're going to have numerous weeknight games as well as weekend games. And also go get stocked up with some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon or 360 vodka for your tailgate this weekend against Arizona State, or also the season finale or home finale against Cincinnati and Manhattan a couple weeks out. Go get stocked up or when you're watching the Cats at home. So go pick up some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. It's a huge hit. Everybody enjoyed it at the tailgate we had a couple of weeks ago. I think they'll be back at one of the Wildcat NIL tailgates serving out drinks before the season's end as well. So you have an opportunity to try it there. Tremendous stuff from tremendous folks who support Kansas State. Well, Derek, we're here to talk some K-State basketball, and they're 2 games into the season now, into the regular season, 2-0, defeating in the opening win. Gosh, why? This is terrible, DY. I'm literally blanking on the opponent.
New Orleans.
Opener, New Orleans. Just atrocious there. I have Cleveland State on my mind. I was in Manhattan for the Cleveland State game on Saturday. K-State won that one 77-64. Defeated New Orleans 89-65. I've even got the score in my mind, but was blanking on the opponent. Just how do you dissect or assess what you've seen through the first couple of games, and maybe even dating back to the exhibition game against Fort Hays State so far?
That they're just working out the kinks still. I think the potential and the capability of this team has flashed, and it is considerably better than last year. You got some shooting, you got some spacing, the defense comes and goes. Right now, they're just working on being connected, getting the chemistry down. Those players that haven't played under Jerome Tang, still learning what it's like to play under Jerome Tang, still learning and understanding what's being asked of them on the court and off the court, really, but on the court in terms of, concepts and all that. It's a handful of players that have played in different systems. So there's a little bit of that. And then to me, they probably want to run more than they are, but they aren't able to yet because they're still figuring out some of that, but they're still doing it while winning comfortably, which everyone's like, well, you're playing Cleveland State, you're playing New Orleans. And that's right, but last year, games with a few teams like that were like dogfights, where the game's still in the balance in the last minute or two, or they went into overtime with a few of those teams last year in bye games, I believe. So, I don't know. I am still encouraged by what I have seen overall, is what I would say, but far from a finished product, and definitely still a work in progress, which in all honesty is exactly what Jerome Tang probably wants at this point.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up with the games that happened last year in those situations. I was there for the North Alabama game that went to overtime last year. I think it was Oral Roberts that also went to overtime. I was there for the season opener against Bellarmine. That was kind of a dogfight in the second half. K-State won that game by 8, but it was really a 10, 12-point game much of that second half. The thing about the Cleveland State game, if you didn't watch it, you see how they won by 13. I mean, they were up by 20 with 2 minutes left. They took the starters out, and it got a lot closer than it really appeared. Cleveland State was up pressing some on K-State's reserves that were in the game, took advantage of that and cut it to a 13-point victory, but it was a comfortable win throughout. K-State, that game was never in doubt or in serious threat, unlike last year in situations like that. And while against New Orleans, you started to think at the first 10 minutes of that game, you're like, oh no, it's going to be another one of those close, low major type games. But K-State put the throttle down and hammered them in the second half, really the final 30 minutes of that game, and won by 24 handily. So you feel good about that. And I think the other encouraging thing, DY, like last year, if they would have turned it over 19 times and given up 18 offensive rebounds like they did to Cleveland State, that would have been a game where they, potentially go to overtime or win by 2 or 3 points. This year, they were able to overcome that. They're giving up. I mean, look, Jerome Tang and the staff, they do not want to turn the ball over 19 times. No one wants that. They don't want to give up 18 offensive boards. But if that had happened last year, it would have been a different story. This year, they were still up by 20 points while doing that. And I think that speaks to maybe the scoring capacity and the talent on this team to be able to overcome some struggles like that.
Yeah, they're going to score some points this year just because they're able to space the floor with the weapons that they have. They're going to get some offensive rebounds themselves. They have some guys that handle the ball really, really well. Have guys trying to handle the ball that necessarily shouldn't be on the ball. You have more depth there too. CJ can do it. Doug can do it. Even Coleman Hawkins can do it. Max Jones, David Castillo, a lot of guys that can do it. Last year, that wasn't the case. So you're able to facilitate a little bit better, shoot a little bit better, pass a little bit better, space the floor a little bit better. On nights where this team really takes care of the ball, they're going to score a ton of points. I mean, they're going to be, my bold prediction would be that we're going to see more high-scoring games than not, especially as they continue to work on the defense, which is probably what's ailing them a bit right now. And some of that is understanding some of those guys playing in this kind of defense for the first time and understanding where to rotate, when to rotate. Some of it is not stopping the ball. And some of it, like Coach Tank says, is, letting your offensive performance maybe dictate your energy and effort on that end of the floor too. So things defensively, they're much more of a work in progress. Not that they aren't on offense, but that talent, that God-given capability that we're talking about, it definitely comes through much more on the offensive end.
I watched Jerome Tang's press conference on Monday, DY, and one of the things that stood out to me is I think he said that K-State on first shot defense is right around maybe top 5 in the country.
Rebounding really been bad right now.
And it's the rebounding, obviously, and what we saw against Cleveland State. They're holding teams to just around 38% from the floor through 2 games. Their opponents have actually shot almost 40% from 3. So what's interesting about that is their opponents are 33 of 86 on 2-point attempts, which is 38%. Which is
that's a product of the length that this team has. It's going to be, everything's more condensed and clogged in the paint and inside the 3-point line. So the shots, they're going to be contested more. And when you have the kind of length that Kansas State has, really in almost every position, but the point guard role, it's going to be tough to get those to fall. So teams will probably shoot a lot of threes to kind of get away from that, to be quite honest. So 3-point defense is probably something worth watching. Another thing is, too, it's they're affecting those shots because they're trying to block a lot of them. When you try to block a lot of them, it's also going to affect your defensive rebounding. So I wonder if that's contributing to the poor numbers there. Because we know this, one of the reasons they brought in Achor was that he is a good defensive rebounder. So you wonder what kind of impact that has as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Achor, we expect to be back for the LSU game on Thursday. Jerome Tang mentioned that he had some travel issues, just got home last week after dealing with a family emergency, practiced the last few days. Sounds like he's in a good spot now and will make his regular season debut against LSU, a very talented piece from Samford who averaged over 16 points and 6 rebounds per game. And we saw what he did against KU in the NCAA tournament, scoring 23 last year in that fascinating 13 versus 4 seed matchup. So you add Achor to the mix. And I mean, DY, when you look at rebounding, like Jerome Tang's even mentioned it after the Cleveland State game, like they as a staff in their 3 years have to do a better job coaching rebounding. To me, it gets back to what you just said, though. I mean, I think this team, from a talent perspective, from a length perspective, they're going to be able to rebound the basketball. It's once they get the defensive principles down that they're in the right position to get the rebounds. I think a lot of people have this misconception, and you weigh in here as well, that rebounding is just effort, right? Go get the ball. But the reality is rebounding, there's a lot of technicalities to it, and you have to be in the right position defensively to get to your guy and box him out and be there for the rebound. And, you know, if you're scrambling, you're getting beat off the dribble, you're trying to block a shot because somebody else got beat off the dribble, that means somebody's out of position and there's a chance for an offensive rebound and a putback. And I think once they get used to playing with each other as a unit and get their defensive assignments down, that the rebounding numbers will drastically improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, that's definitely another large part of it. And those are probably ones at this point in the season that Jerome Tang will live with. What he won't live with is the ones that are rooted in a lack of effort or a lack of intensity. Maybe effort's the wrong word. I mean, I think Coleman Hawkins got yanked pretty quick the other night when he allowed one because he just wasn't giving enough. I think David Castillo got yanked. Actually, might have been the exhibition opener. He got yanked because he let his own guy that shot the ball get the rebound. So when it's happening because of energy level or intensity, they're getting yanked. So it's definitely an item of emphasis because I've seen it happen with Coleman Hawkins. I've seen it happen with David Castillo.
It happened in the start of the second half against Cleveland State with David Gasson. He got outboarded, and David had a great game again. He's had a great start to the season at over 16 points per game and 9 rebounds per game. He's been tremendous, but I saw he gave up an offensive rebound, I think, on the first or second possession to start the second half against Cleveland State, and Tang immediately went to the bench and pointed for someone to go in, and he was yanked at around the 18:30 mark. So even your veteran guy that they have a ton of trust and faith in, you know, is getting pulled out if they give up a rebound in that situation. So I think they'll ultimately get it figured out. It's just going to be a matter of time with these guys. You'll hear us constantly say this the first few weeks of the season. Look, when you bring in 10, 11 new guys to your roster, there's a lot of acclimation that's going on. And as they continue to play more games together and more practices together, they'll gel. And I expect the talent on this roster to be really solid and that things will come together as the season goes along. Speaking of things coming together, yeah, go check out homefieldapparel.com. Go get some gear from Homefield. They've got over 50 K-State items on their website. You guys have heard me talk about the campus pullover jacket that they released a few weeks ago. It's a sweet throwback, kind of purple retro jacket pullover that you should go get your hands on over at homefieldapparel.com. Plus tons of hoodies as we head into late fall and to winter that you'll want to get stocked up on. Sleek retro designs. That is amazing stuff, plus some hats on there as well. We've got several hats, DY and I do, from Homefield Apparel. So go get stocked up. Over 100 colleges to choose from. DY, is that a Ohio State hoodie there that I see? Utah. Oh, shout out to the Utes, our friends from Utah. DY, you got a message for Utah fans right now? I'm sure they're feeling a little down in the dumps.
Oh, well, that was a funny game. The call was not that egregious. I don't understand the complete meltdown from the Utah folks, specifically their AD, who basically tried to commit career suicide at one point immediately after the game, where he grabs the microphone in post-game and talks for 10 seconds and rants. Yeah, I won't get his fine, $40,000. That's our producer there. Remind me of that. But hey, rooting for you this week. Go beat the Colorado Buffaloes, right?
Yeah. We'll see where the mindset of that Utah football program is at this point. That $40K, just spread that around to the rest of the Big 12 schools. Give them a couple thousand each, thanks to Mark Harlan's comments about the officiating in the BYU game. I fell asleep in the fourth quarter of that game, and I thought Utah was going to win. And no surprise, BYU once again finds a way to pull one out. But I woke up to those sound bites, and I thought I was being pranked. I didn't think it was real. So fascinating stuff by Mark Harlan. But hey, Mark Harlan, go get some Homefield Apparel gear if you're watching. And we can say, hey, Mark Harlan, we can save you 15% off. You're probably down in the dumps a little bit. You just lost $40,000. We can save your program. It's probably not coming out of your pocketbook, but you guys can go get stocked up by using the discount code 3mall24. Get 15% off your entire order over at homefieldapparel.com. Check them out. Great K-State stuff over there.
Go beat Colorado.
Yeah, go beat Colorado.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
DY, before we jump into the big matchup Thursday night against LSU and talk about the upcoming slate coming for Kansas State, I did want to hit on a couple guys, specifically on this roster. Obviously, we know David Gasson. We talked about him on our Patreon pod, actually at patreon.com/3mall last week and talked some K-State hoops and how impressive he's been. Also, Brendan Austin. I mean, leads the team right now, 19.5 points. He's 10 of 18 from three. He's been phenomenal. What do you make of what you've seen from Austin, and are you surprised in any way?
Surprised a little bit at the volume, I would say. Getting a lot of shots off, but like we discussed not long ago, if they're good shots, I have zero issue with it. And 99% of the time, they have been good shots. So little issue with what he's done so far. What I would say is I'd temper things a little bit. I'd pump the brakes a little bit like I did with Tobias and Sami after everyone went nuts about him after the first game. And I thought that was going to be, a reflection of what this season was going to be like for him. And I was like, well, he's bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. So, those snap counts won't be as high. Maybe that impact won't be as high against the rest of the schedule, which was pretty much true. Although he is turning a corner, so that's no shot on Tobias and Sami. Brendan Hassan, if I had to make a prediction, and this is not taking a shot at him either, no offense being meant, but I would say his minutes will go down as the season moves along, especially when they get into conference play, because Jerome Tang kind of alluded to it. He's going to be the guy that these really good teams, they smell fresh blood, they're just going to attack him over and over, because right now, I don't think he's going to be able to guard in the Big 12. And I don't think that's a hyperbole at all. He has a hard time guarding right now. So how there's going to be times where they can't have him on the floor. So I think as the season moves on, he's still going to shoot really, really well. I just don't know what his minutes will look like. They're challenging him not to be that guy, so they're working on it ahead of time. So he isn't that guy that just gets picked on over and over. But that's probably what Big 12 teams are at least going to try to do.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he took a charge on Saturday. I saw Jerome Tang at the bench, really excited for him when he took that charge in transition. He got his hand on a couple of passes defensively as well, deflections that resulted in turnovers for Cleveland State. They may have to go zone a little bit when Brendan's out on the court, but I mean, I think he can defend adequately well enough when they challenge him like this, and he's a veteran guy. I think he'll be able to figure it out and be adequate on the defensive end to where the length at the other positions helps make up for any issues around there as they continue to get these things nailed down. I mean, you see guys like Brendan Austin, other teams can figure it out. Brady Heslip for Baylor, when they add him, there are workarounds. Even if you have a guy that's maybe not as elite of a defender or as quick, that you can figure it out. I trust that the staff will. But I agree, his minutes, he's at almost 30 minutes per game right now. I mean, he probably won't be at that volume, especially with the depth on this team as the season goes on. That'll come down a little bit. I also wanted to ask you, DY, about Doug, because Jerome Tang spent some time at his press conference talking about how hard it is to be a point guard for him in his system and the high expectations that he has for point guards, and that he's pleased with where Doug McDaniel is headed right now. And look, I've seen really great effort from Doug. Good body language through 2 games, even though the shot's not maybe going in at the clip he wants. He's shooting just under 27% from the floor. We know he's a dynamic scorer. Hasn't been able to get it going offensively yet from a scoring standpoint, 6 points per game. And really, a lot of his points are on steals and just layups in transition. Against Cleveland State, he had 5 steals and got a couple layups and breaking away from Cleveland State there. But, he really hasn't gotten going in the half-court type offense. 0 of 5 from 3. This is a guy that's 36% in his career from 3 on 245 attempts coming into the year. Just a dynamic scorer. Scored 33 points against Oregon and Florida both last year. Scored 26 at St. John's. We know how good of a scorer Doug McDaniel could be. But it feels like right now he's trying to figure out how to be a leader and a true point guard in Jerome Tang's system. That's a little bit of an adjustment from what he was in at Michigan. He's averaging 6 assists per game through 2 games, only 4 turnovers, so a 3-to-1 turnover to or assist to turnover ratio. That's really good. How do you kind of assess what you've seen from Doug so far and Jerome Tang's comments about him and playing point guard in his system yesterday?
Yeah, judging by where he was in the offseason, and by that, not that we know that he wasn't good enough to be starting, to now where, the other night he got 29 minutes against Cleveland State, and he's playing well and doesn't have to score to play well. And I think, and Jerome Tang was never worried about his scoring. He was worried about everything else. Or everything else has looked pretty good through 2 or 3 games. So I've said this, their plan, their process that they're putting him in is going exactly the way that they wanted it to go. Because, look, he got 5 steals on defense. So he's doing the things that they want him to do on defense. He is facilitating the ball. Despite the team not taking care of it, he is kind of taking care of the ball himself. So the more that he is involved, the more that playing time that he earns, the more of a role that he is given will be good for Kansas State. It probably means as a team, they will turn it over less. They'll be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more explosive, a little bit quicker, all these things. But they needed him to round out maybe some of the sharp edges before they wanted to give him the keys to the car. And I think that's happening.
Well, I think you can also be encouraged by the fact that he's averaging 6 a game. Coleman Hawkins hasn't, really gotten it going from a scoring standpoint yet at 8.5 points per game, and we know he impacts winning in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure Hawkins is ever going to be he's never really scored a ton anywhere.
Well, last year he was at 13 a game. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets around 12, 13 a game.
Yeah, but
this year.
But like the 15 to 20 point scores that we see in Jerome Tang teams, yeah, he could be that. He's just never been that. That would be my thing.
Yeah, he'll have some surges where he gets hot, but he stuffs the box score, as we all know, in so many different ways. Even when he's at 8.5 points per game, he's at 5 assists per game. He had 3 steals against Cleveland State. He had 5 assists. He had 12 points. The efficiency numbers aren't quite there from a scoring standpoint yet. He's shooting 31% from the floor. We know that'll uptick as the season goes on, but not getting a ton yet from a scoring capacity from him. You add a Shore to the mix. The talent level goes up even more. We didn't even mention Max Jones, who's 11 of 16 from the floor so far, averaging 15 points per game. And then Ani Enzo, hopefully the light bulb kind of comes on for him. He's only averaging 9 minutes per game through 2 games, and I just think he needs to be a little bit tougher. And he'll figure things out. Hopefully he's a talented piece, the Kentucky big man transfer. So hopefully he gets it figured out. All right, DY, the schedule certainly cranks up as we head into Thursday night, and it's going to start to crank up as we go on now throughout the rest of the season. There'll be some gimmies in there mixed in, but there's going to be some hard ones as well coming Kansas State's way as they get ready for Big 12 play. And we're going to make this our top storyline of the week, brought to you by our friends over at Elanco. Tremendous K-State fans, tremendous K-Staters. They love their K-State basketball, I can assure you of that. So go get on over to elancohome.com and check out all the home improvement things that they offer, the services that they offer, from premium window replacements, siding, bathroom remodels, everything you could want for your home improvement needs. Elanco has it. So go check them out over at elancohome.com. But DY, the schedule certainly gets tougher Thursday night. Kansas State's got an LSU team that's coming into Manhattan. It's your first Power 4 type matchup. 8 p.m. tip on ESPN+. LSU 2-0 on the season, defeated Louisiana Monroe in their opener 95-60, knocked off Alabama State 74-61 earlier this week, or on Sunday, actually. Now, they did trail Alabama State 48-38 with under 13 minutes left in the game. Kansas State has beat LSU both times over the last 2 years, so it's actually the third matchup against their head coach, Matt McMahon. They beat him 61-59 in the championship game of the Cayman Islands Classic in 2022, and then they knocked them off 75-60 down in Baton Rouge last year in a road game at LSU. Cam Carter, former Kansas Stater, returning home to Manhattan to Bramlage Coliseum. Would expect that Cam will get a strong ovation from Kansas State fans. Nothing but respect for Cam Carter and all he did in his 2 years in Manhattan. But how do you I guess the question I would have for you, DY, is a 2-part question. What do you hope to see on Thursday night, and what do you expect to see?
I would hope to see a team more engaged and playing faster. I think it's hard sometimes. And now it's hard, despite it being hard, you still got to do it. But I think it's hard sometimes to play at the pace you want in games that are not really filled with a lot of intensity. And I wouldn't call New Orleans or Cleveland State or Fort Hays State any of those three games that really brought a lot of intensity from Kansas State. So we're going to see them play at a energy level that we haven't this year. Can they do that and still take care of the ball? Can they do that and still be collected enough to shoot at the clip that they are? They shot over 50% from three the other night against Cleveland State. If they do that, I have little fears about this game, because what does worry me a little bit is that LSU can really put the ball in the hoop too. So we know that. Obviously, Cam Carter's one, but they got players that are scoring at a more of a volume than even Cam Carter at this point. They're an offensively gifted team too, but I don't think LSU is going to play in a way on defense where Kansas State should be affected as much on the offensive end. They have some size about them as well. You mentioned the Alabama State game, but K-State hasn't really got into a situation like that. So if there does come a time in a game where there is a little adversity, how will Kansas State respond? I think that's another question to ask as well. Not that this team is soft, weak, and can't. It's just it'll be the first time it has happened, right? I said that, about the football team. They were so young and youthful, a lot of new pieces on offense. What happens when that first really mountain of adversity hits? Are they going to be ready for that moment? And they got shelled at BYU when that happened. So a lot of these guys have done it before. They're just doing it at Kansas State for the first time and doing it with their teammates for the first time. I'm not really worried about it, but we're going to learn a lot about this team because they are getting to play in a high-intensity game for the first time.
Oh, and I expect the best atmosphere that we've seen in Ramlage so far this year. Look, I would hope a lot of people are able to maybe do what I'm probably going to try to do, take off work on Friday, start the early weekend, or if you could work from Manhattan, great on Friday. Get a jump start on the football weekend with Kansas State being at home Saturday against Arizona State, and just go ahead and come on down for some K-State hoops against LSU and create a frenzied atmosphere. Hopefully the students show up in full force. And then also, you got the women's game against a good Creighton team that I watched in the NCAA tournament last year, win a couple games, really talented squad there that's coming into Manhattan for the K-State women, which are ranked number 10 in the country, which just a quick plug there, Jasmine Halliburton's show you may have seen pop up on our KCSN feed as she's back producing content, covering K-State volleyball, women's basketball, and lots of great stuff there. She actually had K-State women's basketball head coach Jeff Mitty on the pod on our KCSN K-State feed last week. So encourage you to go check it out. She also had the head volleyball coach Jason Mansfield on the pod a couple weeks ago as well. So tons of great stuff coming with guests as well with Jasmine. And so be sure to check that out on the KCSN feed, on the audio platforms, and on YouTube as well. The K-State women are off to a great start to the year and top 10 in the country now in the latest poll. So the women play at 5:30 against Creighton. And if you buy a men's basketball ticket to the LSU game, you can go in, sit GA at the K-State women's game. So good opportunity if you can get there, even if you can get there 10 minutes into the game, go fill it up for the women as well and pack Bramlage Coliseum for the men too. And what should be a great atmosphere and a fun basketball night in Manhattan before a fun weekend when it comes to football. DY, it's an LSU team that's picked 14th out of 16 teams in the SEC preseason basketball poll. LSU finished last year 17-16 overall, but they did go 9-9 in the SEC with some big wins in SEC play as well. Had a couple upsets in there. They lost in the first round of the NIT. I don't like looking at Ken Palm numbers this early in the season because a lot of it's based off preseason metrics and teams haven't really played anybody. Most teams haven't. LSU's 49th in Ken Palm. K-State's 51st in Ken Palm. LSU's 47th in offensive rating and 52nd in defensive rating thus far this year. Cam Carter leads LSU with 21 points per game, shooting 52% from the floor, over 61% from three, 1 assist to 3.5 turnovers per game. Jalen Reed, 6'10" junior in his third year at the program, averaging 15 points and 5.5 rebounds per game, shooting 83% from the floor. He averaged 8 points per game and 4 rebounds last year. The guy that Jerome Tang mentioned, aside from Cam Carter yesterday and Jalen Reed, was Jordan Sears, 5'11" point guard. He's a senior, fifth year at college basketball. He's transferred from 2 other schools, started his career at Gardner-Webb, spent the last 2 years at UT Martin, averaged nearly 22 points per game last season at UT Martin, shot 43% from the floor and 43% from three on over 5 attempts per game, nearly 1,700 career points, also 82% from the foul line on 495 attempts in his career, 4.5 assists to 3 turnovers last year. Talented piece. They've got several guys. I mean, a lot of their guys are veteran type pieces. I mean, DJ Bailey, he's in his 5th year at college basketball, spent his first 4 seasons at Richmond. He's averaging 14 points per game for LSU as well. Derek Fountain, 5th season at college basketball, 3rd year at LSU, averaged 8 points in 2022-23 at LSU, over 5 points per game last season. 4 points per game this year. Mike Williams, talented sophomore guard, started 22 of 33 games last year as a freshman, averaged over 7 points per game. He's averaging 4 per game so far this year. Damian Collins, a guy K-State recruited out of the portal a couple of years ago, former 5-star recruit, transfer from Kentucky. Also another guy that plays some minutes for LSU. So they've got some talent. I expect K-State to win this game by 10, 12 points. I mean, DY, do you have a kind of a prediction on what you think is going to happen?
I'll say 7 to 10.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I think it should be a great atmosphere. And then things start to crank up. I mean, K-State's got, I say crank up, they got Mississippi Valley State. It's kind of a tune-up game before they go to the Paradise Jam tournament. Then they play George Washington to open that up next week. And then the possibility of playing some mid-major types that were in the NCAA tournament last year. UAB was a tournament team, and McNeese State, coached by Will Wade, is a tournament team, and they're both in the Paradise Jam tournament. So maybe not the sexiest of names, but there are some talented squads in that tournament. And then you got St. John's, a road trip coming there on December 7th. That'll be here before you know it. DY, anything to add on K-State hoops that we didn't hit on?
Hopefully I'm not at the St. John's game, because that would mean I'm not in Arlington.
Yeah, so is that the same day?
Yeah, and it's at 11 a.m., 11:30, the basketball, or 10:30 a.m. tip, the basketball game is.
Yeah.
It would be going on at the same time as the Big 12 championship.
You talk about an adjustment there to wake up and have basketball before 11 a.m. And
it'll be going on the same time as the Big 12 championship game, and obviously because of the Big East television contract, I don't think that's going to get moved either. So
yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully you're in Arlington and you've got that St. John's game pulled up on the side on a computer, perhaps. So go Utah, 9.5 point underdogs this weekend. And
it opened at 7.5, so that baby's flying to Colorado.
Yeah, Utah maybe play really physical on Saturday. Maybe just be really, really physical against Colorado.
You said that you guys can grab without getting called. Be a little grabby, yeah.
And then, I'm going to be waving the wheat for our guy Nick the next couple of weeks, especially next weekend with Colorado going to Arrowhead against KU. DY, Nick is calling it right now. He says Colorado's going to lose to KU. I mean,
so according to Nick, it's all going to come down to Farmageddon. If K-State wins, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, exactly. If K-State beat Arizona State in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they got business to take care of on their end. DY, did you see the betting line for BYU KU's 2.5?
Yeah.
So that means they feel like KU on a neutral field is dead even with BYU.
Yeah. I mean, the books have basically done that to BYU all year. And BYU keeps proving them wrong. But
kind of. They keep playing with fire in a scheme.
I mean, if Colorado and BYU play each other in Arlington, Colorado will probably be a 5-point favorite.
I would agree with that. I would not be surprised at all if KU goes to Provo and beats BYU. The only thing, that game being under the lights, but I mean, KU is probably
that doesn't really matter for K-State, though.
The only thing that
unless you think BYU is going to lose out, I guess.
No. I don't think that. It's not really that, DY. It's keeping bowl eligibility on the books for KU, if that's any sort of a motivator for that KU team. Because if they go to Provo and
I'm sure BYU, it is. But here's my, I'm sure that is. You'd rather it be on the table than not. But they're going to play Coach Prime in that Colorado machine or whatever. regardless. They're going to play for that game. So I don't think having a bowl game on the line is dependent. I don't think their energy or intensity or give a damn is dependent on bowl eligibility, but obviously it'd be another nice carrot to have. I also think there are certain coaches that regardless of where their team is at, their teams don't quit on them. Like, I don't think a team's going to quit on Lance Leipold, like, ever. Just like if Chris Kleiman had a team that was 4-7, that last game, they're probably still going to be playing just as hard. There are certain coaches that will always get the most out of his team.
Yeah. Though I will say, I guess there could have been some incentive to BYU losing to Utah, because the more I watch BYU, man, I mean, I could see KU go in there and hand it out. They could have handed them their second loss, and then I could see BYU losing at Arizona State. Like, they could have racked up 3 losses in a row had they lost to Utah very easily.
Probably still can, right?
No, I mean, their season finale is like Oklahoma State in Provo.
No, it's Houston.
Oh, it's Houston? They don't play Oklahoma State?
Colorado does.
Colorado. Okay, that's where I was getting it mixed up.
So, I mean, they have BYU has KU, Arizona State, Houston. All 3 capable of beating them.
Okay. Well, odds of losing all 3 slim, but had they lost to Utah, I mean, the odds would certainly be higher. Look, I'm looking forward to the slate this weekend, seeing what...
Remember, Oklahoma State already almost won in Provo. It was a 3-point game. You watched that game.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I had some extra incentive to watch that game, not only for K-State, but I had some money on that game.
Did it not? That probably didn't go your way then.
No, it won. So, yeah. I trust Mike Gundy, DY, big time. It's not like I called it.
They quit now, though. That team has quit now.
Yeah, they're done. They're toast.
They get crushed by TCU.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for this show, but we're gonna have tons of football content coming your way as we get back to the grind in our routine schedule. With Arizona State on Saturday, 3 games in 3 weeks as we go down the home stretch of football season. So be on the lookout on your feed. Thursday, we'll have the pregame show that drops on the feed for the Arizona State game. And then we'll also have another player interview pod. If you didn't check out last week's pods yet, we had the show with Curry Sexton where we did the film review against Houston as well. And then also Taylor Portier, K-State senior offensive lineman we had on the show. He was outstanding. So, if you haven't had a chance to go check that out, if you were still feeling down in the dumps about the loss to Houston, hopefully those feelings have started to subside a little bit, and you can go check them out on that show. LSU Thursday night, be in Bramlage, support the Cats, and look forward to hopefully seeing many of you at both in Manhattan on Thursday and Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Go to the Wildcat NIL tailgate as well if you're a member. If you're not, go get signed up over at catsnil.com so you can come hang out and enjoy all the great food and drinks and hang out with some great K-Staters over at the Wildcat NIL tailgate. Starts up at 3 p.m. on Saturday before the Arizona State game. For Derek Young and Nick Springer behind the scenes producing the show, I'm Cole Manbeck. Thanks for listening to another episode of 3 Mall.